Well, I love airports. I love the anonymity of airports, that when you're in there, you have conversations with people and people unburden themselves because they're not going to see you again. And I'm thinking about one conversation like that, which happened about 30 years ago. I was sitting next to this woman, this lovely woman called Georgina. I'd never met before, but we spent 5 hours chatting together because our planes were delayed. We were on 2 separate planes. Our planes were delayed for 5 hours in 30-minute increments. And so we really got to know each other. And we had quite a lot in common. She was a Shakespearean actress. I'd always loved the stage. And she, in fact, took Shakespeare behind the bars, and I was to end up being a chaplain at the largest men's prison in Maryland. I left a few years ago. And so there was a bonding. And then she told me this story. Now, it must be said that recently I read it online. And so, but this is how it actually happened. She was an actress, she had lots of interviews, and so it would have been out there. But anyway, this is what she told me all these years ago. She told me that she was performing in Liverpool, in England, and she knew she was having a long run, and so she rented a house in a place called Denmark Street. Now, Denmark Street was row houses. And the thing about these row houses was that people had been living in them for the same people had been living in there for a long time, families. And in fact, there was a lot of widows. They had gone to school together, they'd grown up together, many of them, their husbands had died, they comforted each other. And when anything went on down Denmark Street, all the lace curtains would twitch. And once they got telephones, then all the telephones would be hot as one phoned the next and phoned the next, with telling all the news that happened down Denmark Street. Now, as I said, they were row houses, except for one. So it was near the docks, and during the Second World War, a bomb had fallen and taken out 2 houses. And so a businessman had come in, he'd bought the place, these 2 houses, and he'd put up a completely different house, a completely different style. It was architecturally designed, and there were many, 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 many windows. And so they called it the glass house. Well, when Georgina moved in, she met the lady who lived in the glass house. Her name was Esmeralda. They got on terribly well because Esmeralda had been a Shakespearean actress. She had given it up when she'd married her husband. She'd been married to him for about 10 years. And she was very glamorous. Esmeralda was wonderfully glamorous. She always wore flowing clothes, and she had long auburn hair. And the people, all the people down Denmark Street, loved the fact that she was there because she had friends who were in the theatre business and the movie business, and they would come to Denmark Street, to the glass house, to parties. Terribly exciting. All the curtains would twitch. All the telephones would be hot as those guests would draw up. Well, so my newfound friend told me that there was one time she unburdened herself to Georgina, and she said, the marriage isn't going well. It's not going well, and my husband's away an awful lot. He's away at work, and he's coming home later and later, and he's going to a lot of conferences. But I'm sure I can win him back. And she was the kind of woman that men fell for. I mean, she had absolute confidence that she could win this man back. And so he was going to be away at a conference, and so she decided this was the weekend she was going to act. She knew when he was going to come back. She ordered in all his favourite food from Harrods. A wonderful hamper came from Harrods. She laid it all out, laid a beautiful table, candles. She changed into something absolutely lovely, and she sat and she waited for him. Well, just about the time that he should have been arriving, the telephone went, and it was him. And he said, Esmeralda, I just want you to know I'm not coming home tonight. No, he said, I don't want you to say anything. This marriage is over. No, don't say a word. It's over. Now, if you remember, we have a prenup, and so tomorrow I want you to go to the bank manager. He has got all the details. I've rented you an apartment, and as we agreed, you will be fully funded for 3 years. But there is one condition, and that condition is that you leave this house by the end of the week. As you know, my father built it, I love it, and I am moving back in, and I want you out. You have to be out by the end of the week. Otherwise, the deal is off. He expected her to shout and scream. She didn't say a word. She just put the phone down. He expected her to phone back several times that night. After all, she was a Shakespearean actress. I mean, she knew passion. Not a word. She just sat there in her home with the candle still flickering in her beautiful evening gown, her long auburn hair down her back, and she thought, and she thought, and she thought. The next morning, the milkman, do you remember when there were milkmen? The milkman, who happened to be the son of one of the widows who lived down Denmark Street, came and told his mother. He said, "She told me the marriage is over. She's leaving in 2 days' time. She's cancelled the milk." Well, of course, I mean, that news went up and down Denmark Street, didn't it? Twitching curtains, the phone calls. And sure enough, 2 days later, at the end of the week, somebody went into the house, carried out boxes, they carried out cases, they put them in a car with Esmeralda, and she was driven away. And then later that night, a Rolls Royce turned up at the door. It was her husband. He got out, he went to the side door, he opened it, and a younger version of Esmeralda came out. You would have thought that it was her just 25 years before. The flowing clothes, the long auburn hair. It was extraordinary. He ushered her into the house. Well, they were indignant. They were indignant. Those telephone lines, again, were hot down Denmark Street. They were furious. They twitched those curtains. I mean, if they could have killed her with their eyes, they would have done. 2 days later, a van pulled up. And it was an exterminator van. Well, the milkman told his mother, he said, "What's happened?" He said, "There's a terrible smell has erupted." He said, "It's probably, they're old houses. I mean, it's probably a rodent or something or other's died in the walls." But it wasn't. The exterminators couldn't find anything. But sure enough, there was a smell that was building. Well, 2 days later, another van came up. It was a sewer van to check the sewers and to check the sump pump. They found out this because of the milkman, of course. And they couldn't find anything, but by now they knew there was a terrible smell in the glass house in Denmark Street because the front door had opened, someone was walking past, and there was a stench that came out of that house that would have made a vulture gag. I mean, it was just horrendous, awful. Well, the next day, the door opened. Of course, everyone is glued on this front door now. The front door opens, and there comes out the young Esmeralda. And she stands and she starts screaming in the front lawn. Well, you don't scream in front lawns in England. It's just not done. But there she was, with flicking that long auburn hair, yelling before God, man, and all the neighbours. And she said, "I don't know why you treat me like this. The smell is disgusting." She says, I sit down in an armchair and the smell wafts up. It's as though it's impregnated in the fabric. I sit on the bed, the same thing happens. It is disgusting. Why won't you take me to a hotel? I know you love this house. That's what you keep saying. You're going to stay here. But if you're going to do that, then I'm gone. And a car drove up, took her away, and no one ever saw her again in Denmark Street. All the phones went, "Good riddance, good riddance, good riddance." She was gone. Well, the next day, another van drew up. And it was one of those last-ditch vans where it's a cleaning company that they call in when there's been a severe flood or a fire or murder with lots of blood. And they came and they started ripping out all the fabric that was impregnated with this terrible smell. And they took out the carpets, they flung them all in the front garden. Well, I mean, the stench, seriously, it filled the whole of Denmark Street. I mean, it was just revolting. They got everything out, and then they went for the curtains. Now, Georgina was telling me this, Esmeralda loved her curtains. In fact, she loved the house. She'd really put her heart and soul into furnishing it. And the curtains were beautiful. I mean, there were many, many windows, so there were many, many curtains. And she had had them specially done, so it wasn't just a beautiful curtain on one side that you could see in the house. No, it was a double curtain with silk on the side that people could see into, and then a lovely curtain on the inside. And she'd had them specially made with triple pleats, and in the middle of each of a pleat, every single pleat, there was a hook which kept all the curtains up on all the rods in all the windows of the glass house in Denmark Street. And when those men came to take down those curtains, that's when they found it. Pierced through in every hook was an acrid, dripping, rotten shrimp. Clearly, she was an actress who liked her revenge served cold. So I asked Regina what else happened. She said she didn't really know because she moved away. The run ended and she went away. She left. She said, but I was glad to go. I was really glad to go because even before all this happened, she said, I really felt that there was something rotten in the street of Denmark. Thank you.